Welcome to Uncompromised, the podcast where we talk about regenerative agriculture, the economics of farming, and how we can uncompromise the industry and the food that we eat. Today, we're going to get into what happened on the farm this past week. It's planting season for the Christmas tree side of things, so we're going to get into that. But before we do, consider liking this video and subscribing to this channel. We're on a mission to restore the soil on our Christmas tree farm by transitioning to fully regenerative farming practices. And we're on a mission to develop a business model that will one day allow our farm to become profitable in an era where the economics of farming aren't always there. Is any of this possible? Do you want to find out? If so, then I think you're in the right place. So get subscribed, learn with us, and be a part of a new farming blueprint for, designed for the next generation of farmers in America. So with that, I think we can go ahead and get started.
Cool.
My name is Kyle, and this is Kevin.
How's it going?
And today we're joined by my dad, Scott.
All right, good to be here.
And so Scott is actually the owner of the Christmas tree farm, and he founded it and got it started from scratch. And so do you want to kind of tell a little bit about your story and like why you got started and how you did that?
Sure, yeah. Well, it kind of goes back. I got a forestry degree back in the 70s, and so that's always been my passion. And my wife Trudy, her passion is animals, and so for the first part of our marriage, the first 28 years, we were in the Air Force, and during that time, of course, we went way away from the traditional farming or anything along those lines. We weren't farmers. We both grew up in a city, that kind of thing. So we ended up, as we were getting ready to retire or thinking about it, we started looking into buying a farm because we thought for a couple reasons that would make a lot of sense to us. Number one, it would keep us active, especially as we got older, that kind of thing. We wanted to stay active and stay healthy. So we thought having a farm would be something that would keep us busy and engaged. But secondly, we both had passions. Her passion with animals, my passion with trees. Having a farm, and especially a Christmas tree farm, made a lot of sense to us. And so that's what we decided to do. So I was active duty here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is by Fairborn, Ohio. And that was my duty station at the time in 2006 when we decided to go ahead and plant some roots, literally and figuratively. So we bought this farm in 2006 and planted our first trees in 2007. And so that's kind of the quick thumbnail of how we got here.
Yeah. And so you started when did you open the actual Christmas tree farm for business?
Yeah, so we didn't open the farm for business until 2015. We actually, in 2014, we sold about 50 trees. We actually had to clear a lane to put in the exit drive. So in 2014, we sold about 50 trees that were along the east side or the south side of what we call field one. That was the first field that we planted. So yeah, so in 2007, we planted our first seedlings, and in 2015, we officially opened for business.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So, and then what year did you officially become profitable?
Well, officially becomes profitable, I think would be kind of a tax thing.
Yeah.
According to our taxes, our first year of becoming profitable was last year. I'm sorry, year before last, so 2024.
Right.
Was where, and what I mean by being profitable was we actually made more than what our expenses were. And from a tax perspective, and so that's where I would say officially 2024 is where we finally broke even. And of course, what I'm thinking about in all of that is the cumulative expenses all the way up until that break-even point. See, so back in 2015, we had expenses, no income, or 2014, lots of expenses from 2007 to 2014, no income. So that compiled every year. And then finally in 2024, we were breaking even over all of those expenses from the initial start till 2024. It seems like a long time, and frankly, it is a long time. But that's officially when we became profitable.
So, and that's kind of going to be the same model here in the farm with the regenerative side of everything, with the exception that we have the coffee hut and chickens, and we're trickling in things to offset the outgoing funds.
Right. And that's helping, but that doesn't make you profitable
No,
until,
not
in
at all.
fact, all of your
Yeah.
expenses are factored into it. Yeah.
So
what did you do in those beginning years to learn how to actually do a run and start a Christmas tree farm, since you didn't have any prior experience to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so there was, I would say there were two things that really helped us in that. One was just an exhaustive amount of reading. And of course, the internet was our friend in terms of just being able to learn as much as we can about a lot of topics, diseases, for trees, and understanding the pathology associated with the various species of Christmas trees that we actually grow. Because spruces, firs, and pines all have different pathological issues associated with them. So that was a biggie. Insects, learning about insects and how to treat them. Setting up your farm, and how to get the farm organized in such a way that it makes sense for you in terms of how to navigate the farm, how to secure the farm, how to ensure safety is happening, and how to be as efficient as possible on the farm. So those kinds of things we had to learn. And so all of that was done primarily through reading. But the second thing, and a big thing for us, was we joined the Ohio Christmas Tree Association. And those associations are so helpful because you can network, and that's the whole idea, is networking and learning from others. And our association is so open and available to us. And my mentor was Carl Young out of Young's Jersey Dairy. His wife Dorothy and him. We had known them back in 1989 when I came to the Air Force Institute of Technology. So that's where I met them for the first time.
I did not know that.
Yeah, back in '89, and so because the kids were small, and we would go to Young's Jersey Dairy all the time, and they had a Christmas tree farm there, and I just thought, didn't know at the time that's what we were going to do, but thought that's really cool.
I
It's just
imagine it
really
was
beautiful.
quite a bit different back then.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it actually was. But with Carl, he really helped me when we moved back here in 2007. That was one of the first places I went, was to his farm, and it was in the middle of summer, and he happened to be there. Now, Carl at the time was 78 years old. He has since passed 91 years old, but through that whole time, he was working that farm. And so I would go out there and spend time with him. Even during the Christmas season, I would help him be just one of the laborers, learning kind of the trade, if you will, but then also learning the operation of growing trees and how that works. So you put that together with the networking and all of the reading that needed to be done, and that's how we got started. And did we make mistakes? Tons of mistakes.
No.
But that's how you learn. And I wouldn't change a thing. It was a great experience all the way around.
Yeah,
So,
we were just talking yesterday that we kind of want to do a future episode that's centered around lessons learned and like mistakes that we make along the way.
well, yeah. I mean, some of those mistakes, experiments, we still deal with here on the farm.
Oh, yeah.
And one that I said
yesterday.
yeah, the V ditching.
The V ditching, yeah.
Man,
Well, that may be a 2-episode thing.
yeah. There's
Yeah, it'll be a reoccurring series.
There's a lot. Yeah. Play with there, that's for sure.
Real quick, if you're a coffee drinker and you're looking for a solid brand that supports regenerative farmers, check out 7 Weeks Coffee. If you use our discount code ADVENT, you'll get 10% off your order, or use the link that's in the description below. 7 Weeks Coffee is what we use in our coffee and chestnut hut because they are faith-based, they have a great mission, and their Dominican blend is sourced from regenerative farmers. So it's organic, direct trade, the whole 9 yards. They do not sponsor us, but because we use them in our coffee and chestnut hut, we have an affiliate link that we can share with you. So use that link, or you can use the discount code Advent, and you get a discount, we get a kickback. It's a win-win.
Through the years, it's evolved a lot. The process that Carl taught you to where we are now. And so quickly, I guess, to run down the process of what a typical year looks like, starting January, back when you first started, up until opening day. What did that look like?
Yeah. Well, it's not from a kind of a sequence of events and different things that need to be done. It's really not much different. But the specifics on
Right.
how things are done, especially the planting, has changed over time for a number of reasons I think we'll probably get into here in a few minutes. But yeah, you start at the very end of the Christmas season, and really you're doing your basic cleanup.
Yeah.
So we go through and we're going to clean up. But one of the things we did initially was we didn't do anything. Once we cut the tree down, or once the customers cut the tree down, the stumps stayed there.
Yeah, that's when you were spray painting them, right?
Well, no,
No, not even that yet?
not even that. The stump stayed there.
Man.
So the next year, come springtime, we're out there mowing, and I started breaking shafts on my mower because we were hitting stumps.
You were breaking the shaft.
Breaking shaft, yes. We did that on 2 mowers. The first mower, I mean, bad, knew it happened, the whole thing. Second time was a pure accident, but still, well, first time was an accident too, but the second one, we just didn't see it. The first one, you could see it if you were paying attention, and there's just lots of things, especially weeds growing and that kind of stuff. So what we decided to do that summer was paint the stumps. And so we would go around, and at the time, we sold a couple hundred trees.
Yeah.
That first year. So it was not hard to do. And we would get down on our hands and knees and paint the stumps with bright orange paint. The second year, we decided we get a little bit smarter here, and we got a long extension, and we put a roller on the end of the extension, and we just paint that way. A lot easier, not hard on the back, the whole thing. But the problem with that was it was really hard to still see the stumps. You could see them, but you had to really pay attention.
Right.
And, after you mow around literally thousands of trees, paying attention is hard to do.
It just takes a lot of time. It's like driving at night at high speed,
Oh.
and everything just starts doing this.
Yeah, exactly. So we learned a lot about what to do with that. But then once you get through the process of taking care of the stumps, and I'll go through the more details on that stumps in a few minutes. But once we got through with that, then we would decone. And we were surprised. One of the things I didn't know and I was not expecting was the fact that smaller Christmas trees, some species like Korean fir, Canadian fir, some white pine, grow prolific amounts of cones. So that surprised me because I wasn't expecting that, number one. And number two, I didn't know the cause. Because, you shouldn't see a Christmas tree like these, the spruces and firs in particular, you shouldn't see them cone till around 15, 20 years of age,
Right.
Getting up there. These things have only been in the ground a couple years, and they're starting to cone on me. Why? Well, it turned out that they were stressed because of the lack of rain or too much rain. At that time, in the late 2000s, we had a couple years of extensive rain.
Yeah.
So we had a pretty good amount of flooding. So when trees sense that they're in danger, for lack of a better set of terms, they cone so that they can reproduce.
Right.
I think that's an amazing thing that God has created. So that's what happened. And so that's why they started coning. Now, once they cone, they always cone. So once they started coning, those trees will continue to cone, and they did. Every year. So that became something that we had to take care of. And coning happens even before some of the buds start growing. They start producing cone. So that's how you can tell. So at the very beginning, usually in the April timeframe, is our deconing season. So we would have kids from church come out. We'd have cone wars. They'd pick the cones, they'd collect them, and we'd have cone wars, and it's all kinds of fun stuff that the kids did during those initial years. So then once coning is done, then we go through weed control process, and so that's where we're mowing, and it's 21 acres is what we have in trees right now, and so that's a lot of mowing, and so we literally would mow every single day except for Sunday, to try to control the weeds. At the time, we were using a herbicide as well, and so I would put that down 3 times a year, one in the spring, a heavy dose in the spring. And when I say heavy, I always was half the legal amount that you or the amount you should put on.
Right.
There's always half of that, but that was heavy to me. And then in the middle of summer, I would put a real light dose on, and then in the fall, I would do a cleanup dose. And those were about a quarter of what it should have been. So we did that process. Then in the middle of July, we would do trimming. So we would shape the trees, and even when they're young. So when they're even after, I think the 3rd year is when we started shaping the trees, and I would do that with a Seiji machine, which is kind of a long, heavy teeth device. It looks like a hedger.
You still have that, right?
I do. I have 2 of them. Yeah, it looks like a hedger, but it's 8 feet long, and so I just call it a hedger on steroids.
Yeah.
But we'd use that, and so I would wear that and shape every single tree, and that would take me weeks and weeks to do. And of course, working full time too.
Right.
So
A lot of circles.
a lot of circles and a lot of weight and a lot of hip stuff. So it was hard to do. So it would do that. Then after that was done, then we'd go into kind of a plan for cleaning out the big weeds that we couldn't get to, and so that's where we'd have a sickle. And we'd go in there and we'd sickle them then. You guys have helped me do that. But we would sickle, literally hand sickle these, the taller weeds that grow right up against the tree, because you can't mow right up against the tree. So we do that. Then we move into topping the trees. And so that's where really getting the top set, and that really helps to make sure that the shape remains good year after year.
Right. Making sure there's no double leaders and all that. And
And then just making sure you got to get the proper taper. All that is done. Then once we got through with that, then we start moving into the preparation for the season itself.
Right.
And just all the standard things that have to be done to prepare for the selling season. We go through the selling season, people cut their trees down, and once the season is over, we're back to the beginning where we need to now take care of the stumps. So that's kind of the big picture.
And you were using pesticides at that point too?
Yes.
Pesticides as well?
Yeah, herbicides. We were using some pesticides. Actually, I'll qualify that a little bit. We did use pesticides like 7 on European sawfly,
Okay.
which is an insect that gets into especially Scotch pine.
Okay.
And that was a real problem for us. And actually, initially, we just would squeeze them, but there were so many of them that we ended up just spraying with a small spray bottle. Just spray them and knock them out.
What were they?
Those were European sawflies. And then the other pest that we were starting to get into a lot was white pine weevil, which would get into your spruces, especially your Norway spruce and your white pine. And but we wouldn't use a pesticide on those. We would literally just cut the branch, and usually they would attack the leader. So you'd have to cut that leader, and that of course would set the tree back many, many years.
Right.
Well, we didn't have a lot of that, but we did have enough of it that I'd have to go in and cut 30 liters or so. We're talking, and I'm talking about 15,000 trees here that we had. Initially we would plant about 3,000 each year, and then we built ourselves up to about 15,000 with some of our fields. We have 6 fields. The latter numbers, like 5 and 6, were smaller fields, 1,500 trees, 2,500 trees, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's how we handle that. And then the last pest that really is a problem that we've had every year, and it's not a super problem if you just pay attention to it, and that's the bagworms.
Yeah. If you catch it early enough.
Right. And so we've all been out there literally squeezing those bagworms.
Yeah.
picking them off the tree when we see that they're infested pretty badly. And that's the thing is you got to be out there with the trees. You know, if you just ride around in your truck or whatever, four-wheeler, no, you're not gonna see what you need to see. You get to walk your fields all the time.
Yeah, you're gonna miss them.
And
And
pest is a problem. Yeah. So we did use a little bit of pesticide, but it was primarily the herbicides and then the fertilizers that we would use. Yeah.
All right. And so you planted before you deconed still.
Yes. Yeah. Planting was the first major effort after cleanup.
Right.
Was the planting. And that, that varied.
Right.
It depended on when the seedlings were available and when we were available and when the labor was available.
Right. You had a lot more variables back then.
Oh yeah.
I have a question about the deconing. So you said that prolific coners, they start when they get stressed and then they become prolific coners for the rest of their life, right?
Right.
So does that mean that, because there is a lot of trees that don't cone at all, rather does that mean that those trees were just never stressed, or are there other factors that also make
Yeah.
them?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. So some trees, some firs and spruces in particular, are more prone to cone than others. So like the concolor fir that we grow a lot of here, I never see a cone on them. And that's just the nature of the tree, because all of the trees are experiencing the same environmental stresses.
Right.
Because they're right here. But some react by coning more so than others. The reasons behind that, I don't know. But that's what I understand. And so yeah, there's several species that don't, like Colorado blue spruce is another one, doesn't cone very much. Or
about that.
Nordman firs didn't cone. So but the Canadian and the Korean, plenty of that.
So once they start coning, they don't put the same amount of cones out every year.
That's true.
It just depends on the harshness of that drought or oversaturation or whatever the stressor may be.
Yeah. And even within the tree,
Right.
I mean, within the species, some trees cone, some trees don't cone.
Which is super weird because they be side by side.
Yeah. And some would cone like crazy and others would only cone a few. No, it's hard to understand why that happens.
So, yeah. So this past week, we started that planting season. So that is kind of the first step in throughout the year. If you look at like the whole year as a timeline, there's many steps to running a Christmas tree farm, and then planting season is kind of step one if you include like the field cleanup and stuff that happens leading up to that.
Right.
And so this past week we planted, we got it all done in 4 days?
Yeah, 4 days. That's right. Yeah, so we planted 2,080 seedlings in 4 days.
So 2,080?
2,080. We have another 400 to go.
I thought it was over 2,500.
Yeah, so we have 2,480 that we'll be putting in the ground this year. We have 400 more that are coming in.
Okay.
They're not here yet. Yeah, so those 4 days, 2,080. But there's a history there. We've come a long way. Yeah, one of the biggest changes on the farm has been the planting process.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk through how we do the planting process, but let's start with like how you initially did it and all the different changes that you did.
Before we get into planning, can we take a step back? Because you said when you first started, after the tree was cut, you left the stump. We don't leave the stump anymore.
Yeah, so what's that history as well?
Right.
So factoring that in.
Start there, then we'll go into planning.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because that really is an important part, and that's prepping for seeding.
Right.
So as I mentioned, there at one point or very early on, we didn't do anything at all. But then we decided that we need to go in and cut those stumps down. So I bought a number of chainsaws, and I would literally go and chainsaw every one of the stumps at ground level.
I thought okay.
Yeah, you didn't know that. That was the first one.
Not know that was the first second change.
Yeah, that was our second change was we would go through and we would do that. Now you talk about time consuming,
Oh,
hard on the back, and eating up chains.
right.
Because if anybody knows anything about chainsaws, you put them in dirt
Oh,
and you have ruined your chain.
right.
Is this one thing that you learned from Carl Jung?
It is. That's what he would do. That's exactly what
You
he
know
would do.
if they changed their process
I don't
along the way, or do they still do that?
I don't know.
I
Yeah,
can't
I'd be curious.
imagine.
I can't imagine either.
Oh my goodness.
So then, just the fact that it was so hard on us and it was a bit expensive to do that, I thought, okay, I have got to come. And I was 49 at the time, 49, 50, something like that at the time. And again, working full time. So this is at night and, or in the evenings and then on Saturdays, and had to come up with a different way.
Yeah.
So then after we did that, we decided to, go through and use and my brother came up with this idea. I would rent a chipper, I guess
Stump grinder?
a stump grinder. Thank you, a stump grinder. It had teeth on it and and it went in a circle. And I did that and that worked really well.
Yeah.
Expensive, of course, to rent the grinder. But I would have to dedicate, so I'd take a day or two of leave and I would go out there and usually it'd be super cold at night or during the time that I'm out there, but that's the nature of the business. But would grind these stumps down, and the grinder is slow, and so it would take many, many days to grind these stumps down. The problem with that was did a wonderful job of grinding down the stump, and we would just grind it down to surface level so we can mow over it and nobody would trip over it. It did a great job of that, but the problem is it created a huge mess. It got into the dirt and just messed everything up around it. So that was a problem, but I did that for a number of years. Then finally, we changed that process to a planer. And so we finally got a Toro Dingo, a small one. It's a TX 525 narrow.
Yep. With diesel engine Kubota.
With a diesel engine Kubota, exactly like all the other diesel engines that we have. So we got one of those, and I got a planer, a 14-inch planer. And what this is, so the device is 14 inches wide and it has 3 blades, and it goes in a circle like this, and it planes the stump down.
Yeah. It's got a pilot bit on it essentially.
Yep,
That just kind of pulls it slowly down into the stump
correct.
and just shaves off a layer at a time.
Right.
Yep.
And that's what we currently do now.
Yeah.
And so that's working really well for us. I mean, I gotta sharpen the blades.
Yep.
And it's slower. It's a little bit slower. Doesn't make the kind of mess that we were having to deal with.
But
So that worked out really well for us.
so initially, when you were like spray painting the stumps,
No.
you were doing that because
Hand painting.
you wanted to avoid running over them with the mower,
That's right.
but you still currently don't run over the stumps with the mower even now. So how are you? Because you're just going around them.
Right. At the time, we had a different mower than the mower that we have right now. And so the mower didn't have the protections that this one does. And so, yeah, I mean, literally, I don't know if you remember, you may not have seen this, but we had and I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it was a big 32-inch walk behind mower that you could stand on, stand
purple?
behind it. Yeah, the purple one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one that broke the shaft
Okay.
twice on it. And so it was an easy replacement. I just ordered a shaft,
Yeah.
throw it back in there, off we go. But yeah, that's the one. But now with the ones that we're using now are John Deere F735 diesel mowers. They're commercial 60-inch deck mowers. We have 3 of them that are all 1998s. They're exactly the same. So that if something happens, the reason we have 3 was because they don't make them anymore, and we wanted to have a parts inventory in case something broke on the other ones, where we've been able to keep them all running. So
So
that's
you go in and out.
Yep.
You go down the lane, but you're also like weaving around the trees to make sure you're mowing around them to
Right.
mitigate weeds and stuff. Um, do What's the advantage of planing or getting rid of the stump other than just protecting your mower? I mean, are you trying to just increase the time it takes for it to decompose?
Correct. Correct. That's an advantage. It's not a huge advantage, but it does help. Puts nutrients, it allows the nutrients to get back in the soil a little bit quicker. It allows the stump to disintegrate quicker. And it's also safer for the customer, which is the primary reason.
Mm.
And so, because your customers, and frankly, any of us can stumble over a stump. And so this just minimizes that kind of thing. And I think from a quality point of view, I think the customers would appreciate. They may not even be aware that we're doing that kind of thing, but I think if they were, they would appreciate the fact that we're trying to get rid of the stumps. But when you add all of those things together, that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah.
Because there is a cost to it. There's a time cost. There's there's energy associated with doing that kind of thing. So yeah, but that's why we do it.
Okay. All right. So we've you have the stumps taken care of. What's after that?
Yeah. So and still, I'm going to concentrate on planning for just a moment before we get to the planting, because we've taken care of the stumps now.
Yeah.
So when we were doing the planting before, we would use bare root. So in order to put bare root in the soil that we have here in Ohio, we have to prepare the soil a little bit. Now, if you have an open field, then you go through there, or conventionally, we would go through there, we dig up the soil, then I'd build mounds. So I'd put I'd go down and throw a layer of soil over with a one bottom plow, and I'd come back the other way and throw another layer on top of the first layer, and we'd build a mound. And then I would go through with a roller and I'd roll that mound so that it was nice and smooth and even, so that when we're ready to plant, the ground was soft enough to do that.
Right.
So then we would go through with a 3-point auger, 6-inch auger on the back of our tractor in an open field, and just one right after the other, just boom, 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 right on down the line. And we would dig our holes.
I'm trying to picture this because I actually don't think I've seen this part of the operation at the time. So you have I'm assuming that's the 4-8 in,
Yes.
and then you have an auger attached to the back of it.
Right.
And so when you go down the lanes, are you like backing it up and angling it?
No,
the row?
No, so it's open field. So we actually would straddle the row, and we go right down the row. The row's right in the middle.
So you were only planning on doing it this way for the first few years?
Right. If we had an open field. Yeah, because what that means is there's no trees in the field at all. And so we built the rows. I would actually then go through and put popsicle sticks on one end, popsicle sticks on the other end, to give us a line of sight, so that we'd have between the rows, we'd make sure our trees were nice and lined up. And that's just more pride thing than anything. But yeah, that's what we do is my brother would be on the tractor, or we'd switch out. I'd be back behind. Remember, a 4-8 in, this is a 1950 tractor, has no downward pressure. So it only has upward pressure on the back as you're with your implements back there. So this 3-point auger, pretty big beast. It's the one we moved inside. If you remember that big old thing.
Took 3 of us to move.
Yeah,
It's heavy.
it's heavy. So its weight itself oftentimes will allow it to pull down, but oftentimes it wouldn't. So I would literally, I'd get behind it, and I built these pulley things, or not pulleys, but just a rope with a couple handles on it. And I get behind it as it's turning and would pull it down. And then we had low set drill kind of thing, which was our rhythm that we would get into. And we could probably put a hole in the ground and go 50 trees down in, I don't know, 30 minutes or so. And then Trudy, my wife, she would follow behind us and the rest of the crew, because we would get kids from the church and would plant the seedlings.
Yeah, the bare root.
The bare root seedlings.
So a bare root seedling is literally just a seedling that has the root fully exposed and no soil.
No soil.
It.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and we'll cover that in just a minute. I do want to make sure I don't lose my train of thought here. because the soil prep was still where we're at. So that's how we would do it initially. Well, once we planted that field, then now and as the seedlings grew or as the seedlings died, because that would happen, we'd have to go in and spot plant. That's where things got a little bit interesting. So I bought a one-man auger. So and a number of companies make them, but we used a still one-man auger. And we would go, and during our planting season, one person would be in the auger, and then the rest of the team is planting. But we would go through and we would drill our hole, and then we would put the plant in, and then our first rain, that hole would sink tremendously. So how do we solve this problem? And when I say sink, it'd be like 6 inches. And of course, that's because of all the air pocket and stuff like that. And you want to minimize air pockets as much as you can anytime you're putting especially bare root into the ground. So we had to learn how to pack the soil a little bit better and those kinds of things. Well, then we decided that we needed some better soil that was loose in the hole. So we went through a process where we would get fresh organic soil from a local vendor. They would deliver it here. We'd fill up a wheelbarrow because we didn't have a cubby at the time, and we'd follow with a wheelbarrow, and we would put soil in the hole. We'd try to minimize how deep we made it, but then we wanted to put soil in the hole because the hole was so hard, oftentimes, that we would put this black soil in. And so all that preparation, and we even put fertilizer in. We would take I purchased these pellets of fertilizer, and I put a pellet in each of the holes, all before you put the seedling in. So again, it's all preparation before you put the seedling in.
Oh my goodness.
Well, then we finally went beyond that and decided that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for a number of reasons. But then that's when things changed in the market that caused us to make some significant changes. But I want to before I get into that, I want to say one more thing, and that is we would have to, in our planting process, we would have 15 or so kids from our church, Trudy and myself, and we would have to teach them how to plant.
Right.
And many did a great job, some didn't do such a good job, and so you had a problem there. To make sure, because we had to keep an eye on how they were planting while trying to stay on top of it ourselves. And we were planting bare root, and bare root is only good for about 5 days once you get them. You got to get them in the ground. So we had all these pressures to make sure these things got in the ground, but got in the ground in such a way that they're going to survive. So we went through that process, and that was a long, lengthy thing. But finally, we came to a point one year, and this was, gosh, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but it was only about 7 years ago,
Right.
8 years ago. We came to a point one year where the days were warm, the seedlings were at our house, and we had no staff. And that was because we tried to always plant when the kids were off of school. Well, in the local area, the school timing is never consistent. So for spring break, some would be off and some weren't. So we couldn't get the kids. So Nicole flew in, our daughter, she's in Virginia. And then her father-in-law flew up from Florida, or he might have been in Houston at the time. But he flew up in his private plane, and they helped us plant that year.
Either way, that's
It's only
a quarter of the people.
oh yeah, it was only a small handful of people. Megan might have been here too. She might have come out. I don't remember, but Nicole really helped me understand. You have got to come up with a different way to plant.
Yeah.
Because this is not sustainable. And I totally agreed. But at the time, I couldn't think of, how do you change this process?
Right.
In such a way, because all we knew of at the time was bare root. So now I want to get into kind of the bare root discussion. So So we were planting bare roots starting in 2007 all the way up till about 4 or 5 years ago, I guess it is. So 5 years, that would have been 2021. So from 2007 to 2021, so that's 14 years of planting bare root. We would get them from nurseries, Christmas tree nurseries. One is called Berkey's Nursery out of Western Pennsylvania. Super excellent seed source for us.
Yeah.
They had a very high quality seedlings that we would get. You paid a premium price for them, but you got some beautiful seeds. And what we were paying for was not so much the tops, we were paying for the roots.
Right.
A good, well-established root system. Well, you got to understand how they actually harvest their seedlings to know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And so this is I found it really interesting. So we would get what's called a plug plus two, or it was a 2+2 is what the industry calls this particular kind of seedling that we got. What that meant is it's 2 years in a seed bed. Then the seedling is pulled and put into a transplant bed. So 2 years in a transplant bed. So before it's ever harvested for us, it's already 4 years old. Well, the way they harvest them out of a seed bed is they use this machine that literally digs them up and cuts the root off. So the root system would be about like this. They would cut anything left over that was longer than that, leave that in the ground. So now you've already got a tree that's got a lot of its root cut off, because the majority of the growing process of your roots is all of those small roots that just got cut off.
Right. How much stress does that? That has to be a huge stressor.
Absolutely. So then they take them and they go through a process of sorting them to weed out any of the bad ones, and they put them in a transplant bed where they have more room to grow. And we're talking thousands and thousands of seedlings. So they do that. 2 years later, they go through the same process, cut those roots off. So when we get them, we got a nice root system that we're paying for, but the main part of that root is left in the ground, cut off. So that's what we would get. So then we would then have to teach the kids, if the roots are too long, then and we'd have scissors. Every one of them has scissors. You got to cut the roots off so that the roots don't J-root.
Yeah.
So when you put the seedling into the hole, you want to make sure that those roots aren't, just J-rooting on us is what it's called, because that'll kill the tree. So we'd have to make sure that the kids knew that and teach them all that kind of good stuff. So that's how we would do it. And so it would take a lot of time and effort. Well, a couple of things changed in the supply chain process that really helped us, that we just were fortunate at the time. One thing was transportation. So if you think about the kinds of seedlings we're getting now that have soil on them, it's very, very expensive to ship those if you don't have a good transportation system that's affordable.
Right.
Well, with the massive growth of the Amazons and the FedExes and the UPSs and all the other supply chain transportation processes that bring us packages on a daily basis that most of us purchase now, we do our purchasing online. The transportation system grew so rapidly that sending packages, heavy packages, became affordable. That was one big change that really helped us. The other big change within the Christmas tree seedling industry, the nursery industry, was this movement away from bare root to a soil plug device. So they call them plugs. So then I moved to a plug plus two. So what that means is that they put a seed in most of them were styrofoam tubes that were about 1.5 inches, 2 inches wide with soil in them. And they would put the seed in there and it would grow there. They wouldn't have to take it out, put it in a transplant bed, cut those roots off. All the roots were self-contained and it was in soil. So what that did was that really reduced the amount of time that they could grow a seedling to a decent height. And that went from 4 years to down to about 2 years. They even sell plug plus one, which is just a 1-year-old small little seedling.
So can you explain the +2 +1?
Yeah, so the plus one means it's been in a plug for 1 year. Plus two means been in a plug for 2 years. So it's just a lot bigger because it's been in that plug for that amount of time. But it's the same soil. The roots can become root bound, and that was the problem. But we would do that. So I would order those. That was my first transition. Was we went away from bare root, which took all of this preparation, the ground prep, the hole prep, and all of that, and moved to this process. Well, with this process, remember now we're doing spot planting. So in spot planting, you have to go through with an auger, and you have to drill a hole. Well, I decided one year, how can I improve this process was if I dig the hole and I fill it with organic soil and let it sit. Then I come back at planting time with a patapuki. So
Yeah, so really all you were changing your augering time instead of doing it at planting season to after you ground the stump down, you'd go out, you'd auger the hole, let it settle, put a little bit of soil in there.
yes,
Yeah, so you were changing that time frame. Same
Correct.
amount of work.
same amount of work, but what was different was I could do that at my own time.
Right. It wasn't as big of a time crunch.
Wasn't as big of a time crunch, and it helped us in the planning because I didn't have to have labor doing that part of it.
Right.
And then also the real benefit was it softened that soil. Plus I had put that organic soil to even it out after, like you said, after it rained, even it out. Then we'd use a device called a patapuki. It's just the ones we have is a 64 millimeter tube. It's a round tube and it's about 3 feet long. And it has a plunger kind of thing at the bottom of it. And you'd step on it and it would open a hole. It would open a hole big enough. You drop the seedling down the tube and it would go in just far enough that it would be a perfect fit for that seedling to sit into the hole. We do that, covered up, and we were like in heaven.
Right. That's a huge change.
That was a major shift
Yeah.
because it helped for us to more quickly be able to plant
And with less people.
with a lot less people.
Yeah.
So that was a great improvement. And again, we were able to afford the transportation to get those seedlings here. They were in much bigger, it took bigger boxes to bring them here and all that kind of good stuff, but it worked out really well.
Well, another thing, because you alluded to this before, with bare root, you have about 5 days to get them into the ground.
That improved with these plugs. You had a little bit longer because they're already in the soil,
Right.
but not a lot longer. You had a little bit longer, probably about 3 or 4 days more. Well, then they came up with the problem. Now was for the nurseries was the roots were root bound,
Right.
and that was a problem for us because if they're root bound and tight, they won't release enough to go out into the soil. And what I didn't want to do was to shake all of the dirt off to loosen them up.
Nutrients and everything, and just
So there wasn't a win-win there at all. So finally, we switched our seed source for Canadian firs to Timbuk, which is a Canadian Fir Tree Company.
Yep.
They offered a seedling that had about a 2-inch round tube kind of thing, and they were a good 8 inches long. And these are the SB15s that we get even today.
yeah.
And terrific. They're absolutely terrific to plant, easy to plant, that kind of thing. And then another new, technology-wise, and I don't know how new this is, but ellie pots came around. And an ellie pot is just a different way of planting that seed in soil so that it naturally air prunes. The roots naturally prune themselves.
So instead of the styrofoam sleeve that I was sitting in.
Where the roots are growing downward and root bound,
Yep.
the roots now grow outward and they're ready to penetrate the soil when you put them in the ground.
Yeah, they're already trained to go out.
Absolutely. So Ellie Pot's just a beautiful thing. And they started, Canadian Tree Company started selling those, and then others started selling those. And so that's what we did. So in that process, one of the companies, no, that wasn't what I think. I think I came up with the idea, but then it was already out there. I just happened to think, why don't we let's make this simpler on ourselves, gentlemen. Why don't we use a drill?
Yeah.
And find ourselves a 2-inch or 3-inch auger that would be big enough for those things to go in there, and use a handheld drill, no prep to the soil. And this is where the regenerative thing came in. Because on the regenerative side, we realized was one of the key principles was don't interrupt the soil.
Yeah, minimal.
Well, that's what I was doing. Every time I was drilling a hole, I was interrupting that soil like crazy.
Right, because you were having to add mycorrhiza to your bare root and everything like that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Just to make that work. So finally, in this process, we decided to move to a drill only, no prep to the ground, leave the ground as it is, drill a hole big enough and deep enough for the seedling to slide down into. So you minimize the disruption of the soil and the structure and the bacteria and the microbes and all the organic matter, everything that's important to be there in an ecosystem. You minimize the disruption of that. Yes, you drill a hole, but it sits so nicely into that hole that you're not having to interrupt an 8-inch or a 6-inch wide hole. You're only interrupting just enough to get that seedling in there. It's already got its own dirt, if you will, or soil. So that's not interrupted. So you're minimizing a lot of impact on that seedling.
Well, then you also don't have the air pockets. You don't have the settling of the soil around it.
So many
those
benefits.
things. And a big one that we've noticed is the time savings to get the seedlings in the ground.
Well, and so one of the things that Nicole had brought up that 1 year was, the fact that, hey, we're not getting any younger in this process. So both Trudy and I are 68 years old now, or I'm 68, she's 67, soon will be 68. But we're out there trying to do this ourselves. And so this year, just like last year, Kevin, you're out there with us. And then in the evenings, Kyle would come with us. And in a matter of 4 days, we were able to plant 2,080 seedlings. And it wasn't hard on any of us. And there was no stress, and there's no appreciable time limit. We can extend that time limit. Well, we got the seeds, and then we had to go down to Florida to visit my mom and my sister, just timing wise. And so we let them sit for a week and a half in the barn before we ever put them in, and no problem at all. So that's the benefit of how we're doing it now. But thanks to some changes within the nursery industry, some changes to the supply chain industry, these things now are a viable option for us.
So back when you did bare root, because I don't remember how they came in packages, were they still in like wax coated boxes in a plastic bag, soaked in water? Kind of not soaked in water, but wet.
Yeah, so those seedlings actually came out of the ground. Those bare root seedlings came out of the ground in the fall. And then they go into a freezer. So they would package them into bundles of about 20 or so. And then some would wrap them. Some will just leave them alone. They put them in a box and then with a plastic bag, and they go in the freezer.
Okay.
Yep. And so then they would come out to us. But yeah, that's how they would handle those. But those, once you got them, because once they unfreeze,
Right.
now you got to get them in the ground. But with these other ones, which also go in the freezer, that's why they sat for most of the time. If you remember, last couple of years, we're out there and we're having to break them open because they're frozen.
Yeah, and trying not to break any of
The
that
dirt.
soil or any of that root zone. Also,
That's why. Yeah.
okay.
So we've come a long way in in how we actually process the seeds, and now we can do it with minimal labor. We don't have, it's just us. We don't have to
I know. I'm looking
be
for the
dependent on anybody else to come out there and to help us.
Wow. So even when it just came to the digging a hole for every seedling, I mean, we went from a tractor auger to a hand auger to a billy goat
Oh, we
to
forgot about
a
the village.
dingo
Yep.
and then the hand drill.
That's right.
And then actually the hand drill you started with like a 4-inch,
4-inch
didn't
bit.
you?
Yeah.
And you went down to a 2-inch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 4-inch bit was for an 80 millimeter Ellie pot. The problem with the 4-inch was if you hit something with a drill, a powerful drill, and we did, roots or rocks, it would twist your wrists so hard that there was a couple times I thought I broke my wrist. It hurt so bad.
Well, and I think twice last year I broke the bit.
Broke the bit. But that's not completely new because, when we used the hand auger, there was many times that I got thrown on the ground, literally thrown on the
Well,
ground
I don't have
when I hit something.
right. Well, and then the billy goat, which is basically a walk behind.
Self-propelled, walk behind auger, which
Right.
so you don't have to carry it around.
Right.
You would just
Still-
move it around.
Still a good amount of work though, and still
yeah.
put it on you. Like
Yeah.
the amount of wear and tear on the body throughout the years and all these iterations has gone down drastically.
Right. Well, that's why we ended up even with the billy goat, that worked well, but it just couldn't keep up with what we needed. So that's when we got the Toro Dingo.
Yeah.
And then the smallest bit we can get for that was a 9-inch bit.
Which is just mass.
Massive and interrupting the soil even that much more.
Yeah.
But our justification there was now you got 9 inches of loose soil instead of 6 inches or 8 inches.
Right.
Because 8 inches is what the billy goat was. And billy goat that's the brand name for this particular kind of self-propelled walk behind auger. Yeah, walk behind auger. Yeah, so went from the 9-inch Toro Dingo to the drill. And so the 4-inch drill bit didn't like that. So I went away from the 80 millimeter seedling plugs, the Ellie pots, and went to 50 millimeter because 50 millimeter, I could do a 3-inch hole and had plenty of room. And this year we decided to use a 2-inch drill bit and that worked perfectly.
Yeah.
Because it was just the right size. So that eliminated a lot of unnecessary packing that we would have to do to make sure that those air pockets were out of there. So now I've settled on 50 millimeter, which is basically, if you will, the size of those SP15s. And then I get Ellie pots for Turkish fur that are 50 millimeter and they all fit nicely. And so this year was just wonderful to be able to put those in.
So
Here you go, buddy.
when you first started, how many different species of trees did you?
Yeah, great question. So we actually had 12 different species of spruces, firs, and pine. We had two species of pine, Scotch pine and white pine.
Which we had gone away from Scotch a while ago.
Yeah. We went away from Scotch because of brown spot, a fungus that got on our trees that we just couldn't. The only way you can treat it is to cut the tree down and burn it. And so we got rid of that. And then we had a number of spruces, and we've gotten away from the spruces as well. So we had Norway, Colorado spruce, we had white spruce, and so we went away from those because needle retention was so poor on them. And then the Colorado blue spruce also now has a fungus growing on it that you can't control. So, well, technically there are fungicides that you use, but we went away from in 2023. We went pure organic and regenerative. So we use since 2023. We don't use any fertilizers, any herbicides, any pesticides, and any fungicides. We don't use any chemicals whatsoever on our trees at all.
Right.
And have seen zero difference.
Right.
I mean, in terms of the health of the tree, in fact, I think they're a little bit healthier. And then our weed control is done by mower and with our hand sickle. And we still do that. And our chickens that we talked about, I think, last week. Yeah.
So, yeah, there's so much in there that I'm not gonna lie. I'm really glad I wasn't here in the early days. So
overall that.
plant I think I helped plant in field 5 between deployments
Yes.
one time.
One time. Right.
And it was the first iteration in that field, or the first plant.
Yeah. And then that year we had a bad drought.
Yeah.
Killed, of the 1,900 seedlings we planted that year in field 5, all but 100 died. So actually 1,810, so all but 90 died.
That's insane.
Yep. And so we had to replant that field the following year. And they died all because of a drought. And that was in 2010 timeframe.
Yep.
And we replanted in 2011.
So
Yeah.
you had just got the Kubota.
That's right. In 2010, that was my first year I got that Kubota
Yeah.
tractor. Right.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. That was
Sweet thing. Still have it. So that
no,
thing's been doing great for us. Yeah.
run like a champ.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my first experience with anything involving Christmas trees. Never had one growing up, a live one.
Yeah.
I mean, especially traveling in the military and everything.
Right.
It's easier just to have the tree in the box
Yeah.
but hi, Tom.
Well, Trudy, as a young child, was allergic to trees, to pine trees. Yeah. She was allergic to the tannins. And so if you remember growing up, Kyle, we never had a live tree either. We always had that same tree, which we still have. And it was 52 when we finally retired the tree. But we didn't have a real Christmas tree until here. And we weren't sure if that made sense to bring a real tree in because we thought she was going to continue to, and she didn't. She was fine.
Well, that's good because she spends a lot of time out there mowing.
Yeah.
So
So she's not allergic anymore. So that was just a childhood thing.
that's great.
Yeah.
How many trees do we have variety wise now?
Yeah. So now we're down to, we've got, because we've really reduced that number significantly. So let me add, I guess, the reason we had so many was, according to the literature, those species made sense to grow in this part of Ohio.
Right.
I'll give you a couple examples of trees that don't make sense. Douglas fir doesn't do well in Southwest Ohio. There are a few farms like Young's Jersey Dairy, which has grown some Douglas fir, but I think they would also say, they don't grow the best. Noble fir, which is grown out west, doesn't grow at all here. Fraser fir, which is grown in North Carolina, Michigan, Pennsylvania, lots of other states like that, but not in the soils in Southwest Ohio. We have high clay loam, sandy loam, those kinds of things. They don't do well in this area. So those 12 that I selected, I knew that some of those would do well, some of those would not do well.
Right.
70% at the time, 70% of all of our trees were Canaan fir. And so the rest were spread over the 30% that were remaining were spread over those 12 trees. We've eliminated all that down to, we don't grow any pine at all anymore. They were just too problematic, and frankly, most people don't want them. 25 years ago, 30 years ago, they were a very popular tree, especially the Scotch fir or Scotch pine, but not anymore. So that's why we eliminated them. They were the most problematic with disease. They were most problematic with pests. So we got rid of those. The spruces, we've eliminated most of them. We have a few left, but this year or last year we got rid of most of our spruces because of their needle retention. They do really well. They're a beautiful tree. They're a very shapely tree, but their needles are hard. So if you have kids, they're not the best for setting up that kind of thing. But the problem was they just didn't hold their needles. So we actually had to limit in the beginning, the first couple of days that we were selling, we wouldn't sell our spruces, or at least tell people, don't get a spruce because it's not going to last until Christmas. But that's hard for some people to know what a spruce is versus something that we try to help educate, but that didn't always work. So we just got rid of them. So now what we basically have is we have concolor fir, we've got Canaan fir, and Turkish fir.
So all firs.
All firs. Those are the 3 different kinds of firs that we have. They're the soft, rounded needle, hold their needles very, very well, have a wonderful smell to them. Concolor fir has a tangerine lemony smell to it.
Smells
The other two have a traditional Christmas tree tannin smell to them, but that's what we're selling now. And now, of course, it's hard to predict. You put a seedling in the ground today and it won't sell for 8 years.
right.
What is the market going to be demanding 8 years from now? This isn't like Walmart where you're thinking on a quarterly basis, what's the population going to want next quarter? It's what are they going to want 8 years from now? And so sometimes that's hard. And we made major mistakes. We planted way too many white pine, as an example, could never sell them. I planted over about 1,500 white pine.
Right. And we just took out a good chunk from this year.
Took a ton of them out ourselves. Yeah. So, those are the kinds of lessons that you learn.
Okay. So,
And then one thing, I don't know if we covered that, but once you get them planted in the ground, the last step is to cover them with mulch.
Right. We have not covered that. But yeah, we cover them with mulch, and we produce our own mulch here. We cover them with mulch to do a couple things. Like in any environment that the Lord has made, you don't see bare soil out there. So you don't want that around our seedlings, because in the direct sunlight in the summertime, it heats that soil up, which heats the root systems up, which can kill them, or at least kill the surrounding kinds of
bacteria.
things that you want to continue growing in the soil. So covering them with mulch helps it minimizes the temperature impact. But what it also does is, until there can be some growth established on that soil that just got a little bit churned up, you want to make sure that you have something that's going to allow, when it rains, it's going to break those raindrops up so that they can easily be absorbed into the soil.
Right.
That's the second really huge thing that it does for us, is it helps to make sure that that we allow the water to slowly seep into the soil by hitting the mulch and then filtering through the mulch. But it also helps to retain the soil by providing a little bit of cover for the soil. So it's a very important step. We end up, most of the time as we're mowing, we'll suck some of that mulch into the mower and take it off. But by then, it's got an established growth around it on the soil that helps to minimize that temperature imbalance that you can have, and water retention.
What else do we need to cover on the planning process? Do we hit it all?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think it can be, it's one of those things that we definitely appreciate. So, bare root, you were able to, like, what was a good day of planting bare root?
Yeah, good day of planting would be if I got 300 seedlings in the ground with the number of people that I had. That was a good day.
Right.
It was a really good day.
And we just did 720.
720. Yeah.
And that was with,
That was a 4 people versus 15 people.
and that was with 2-hour breaks.
Oh yeah.
A day.
Yeah, we'd spend 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, 2 hours in the evening. So a total of 6 hours to put them in. We would spend 10 to 11 hours. I mean, all day long, take a short lunch break and be out there until it got dark.
Right.
Yeah, every day. And that was just killing us. So much better. This process, so much better.
Yeah. And then,
Yeah, that was a part we didn't cover.
How did you do that while you were working
I would have to take leave.
for a whole week?
Yep. I would take paid time off and concentrate on, and my the company I work for was very gracious in allowing me to do that. So I really appreciated that. But yeah, that's exactly how we do it. So most of my PTO during the year
went to work.
went to when I needed to have time to be able to do things on the farm.
So,
Yeah.
well, and that goes to the conversation we've had on the last podcast. Tom, like even the Christmas tree farm was supported by off the farm work and income.
Right.
So, I mean, like when we talk row cropping and everything like that, the Christmas tree farm wasn't immune to that at all.
Right. Now, I think the question is, at the pace we were selling at 1,000 trees a year, was that enough to sustain us as a family by itself?
Right.
Yes. Yeah, we could have lived on that, but it would have been a tough living for us. Now, Christmas trees, and this is dated information. I don't know what the current information is, but I know that when we first started, I did a market survey and visited 21 different farms in the local area. Believe it or not, there's that many that in 2006 there were that many
Not
that were here. There's not that many now. But I went and visited all of them, learned as much as I could before we really moved into it. But one of the things that that we realized was that the majority of farms couldn't make it on their own.
Yeah.
We were just fortunate that the kids were gone and it was really just me and Trudy. So we could survive on that.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't have been able to do all the different things that we've done to get to this point. We'd have just survived. We were coasted at that point. Now now that I'm retired and I don't need to rely on that income that I had before with Social Security and all that kind of good stuff. We're making it work. But families, that have kids, no, it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
It's just
Also, not to mention that if that were the case where you had to rely on that income, that sole income to live, that means that those 4 days of operation at the end of the year that you're actually selling trees, if something were to go wrong, that would just add that would make those 4 days so much more stressful because a number of things can go wrong during the selling season, and then that would eliminate your paycheck for the entire year. Potentially even like future years if you're upsetting that many customers.
Right. And it's a great point. Our faith is very strong, and one of the things we don't do is we don't work on Sundays.
Yeah.
We try to honor the Sabbath day, and so we don't work on Sundays. So that eliminates for a lot of Christmas tree farm, Saturday and Sunday are their days.
Yeah.
So that eliminates half those days, and so we're only open 4 Saturdays. The Saturday after Thanksgiving and the next 3 Saturdays. And you're right. You would, and so as an example, and why are we only open those days and not during the week? Because we can't get the labor. Labor is our problem. And so if we can't get the labor to handle the people, then you can't be open. So if we have a day where it's completely rained out or snowed out or it's so cold, we stay open. And surprisingly, lots of people still come.
Right.
You see a downturn, but this past year, our opening day, it was 10 to 15 degrees. I mean, it's super cold, super windy that day. All those kinds of things make it really hard for people to come out. But we would be totally dependent on those 4 days of being open.
Yeah.
And the last day is really, it's 20 customers.
Yeah.
As opposed to the first day when there's 450 customers.
Sorry, Tom, I gotta go yell at my dog.
Well, and that's a good time to wrap it up anyway. That covers the whole planning process, and you can go.
Well, yeah, we can talk about the remainder of everything in a different episode.
Yeah,
Because there's still tons to talk about in terms of
there's multiple steps for running a Christmas tree farm, and we're going to cover all of those as they come throughout the year. So the next step is deconing, which will happen approximately what time?
Yeah, so the beginning of April, I expect, depending on what the temperature is, but yeah, it'll be probably the beginning of April.
Yeah, so here in a few weeks,
Right,
coming out. So we're going to spend some time deconing, and we'll cover that process in another podcast. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And thank you for watching if you made it this far. And I'm freezing, so I'm going to get a little warm after this. So we'll see you guys in the next episode.